Hey guys, this is Alan with Xtrusion Overland. In this video, we're gonna show you how to assemble your XTR1 rack on this awesome truck. We'll go through all of the different materials and hardware that you'll receive and how to identify it, and then we'll go through how to put it together. All right, so the first step will be to identify the type of bars that you got with your kit. The main kit will come with what we call the two crossbars. These are the two bars that go side to side. They'll also be identified with the CSB part number. And then you'll have 4 side braces or top braces that can be either used on the top or sides. If you end up getting an extra side brace, you'll have another 2 of those. Usually for the Rivian will be a 41.4 inches, and same thing, they'll be identified under the part number MBC. And of course you will have what we call the uprights or columns, and you'll have 4 of these. In this case, for this specific kit we're showing you here, it's an 11.5 inch length. So again, they're identified clearly, and you'll be able to move forward from there to assign it for the assembly. We'll have the unique part of the Rivian, which is the bed rails, and these will be easily identifiable because they're thinner and they will have the access button on them as well. All right guys, so now I'm going to show you what are the components that come with the kit. You're going to have the corner brackets. These attach the crossbars to the uprights, and you'll attach them with the socket head cap screws that are 1.25 inches long. It's important also to know that we want to put our Vibratight on our screws to make sure they don't come loose. We also will have the off-road reinforcement plates. So this right here are the signature look for our bed rack, and these are attached with the button screws, and these are 5/8 long. These are going to be the tools that you'll need. You'll need an Allen wrench. You have a 5/32, a 3/16, and a 1/4 inch. On the Rivian, we're gonna have some new interesting components. So we have the signature bed rail brackets for the Rivian. This will be attached with 2 1.25 inch long socket head cap screws. These go towards the upright, and then it'll attach into the bed rails with the button screws that are 5/8 long. We also have the U-nuts. These are gonna go under the Rivian's rail cleats, and they'll attach the rail extrusion with these low head socket cap screws. So you'll have 2 of these per corner. You'll have an extra socket head cap screw, and this is an 1.5 inches long, and this is to help you bring it up so you can put 1 screw in there, and we'll show you more in detail on how to do this. But just so you know, if you see one long screw that is by itself, that's what it's for. Also, the Rivian bed rails have an end cap, so we can finish the look of it, and this will have a 1/4 inch socket head cap screw that will attach to that. Please also know that sometimes the powder coat gets a little bit thick, so you might have to just run it through a little bit, force it through the first time, but there's nothing wrong with that. And finally, we have the new joint method for the side braces and top braces. This is a mechanical joint that will attach to the end of the extrusion with the low socket head cap screws, and we will have 5/8 long socket head cap screws that will attach from the other end to attached into the extrusion. We'll show you more in detail on how to do this as well. All right, so now we're going to put a side brace together with the uprights. We're gonna start with this section first. This is one of the easier methods to do this. There's a couple different ways of doing things, but I think this is the easier way when you do it on a table. We're going to insert our drop-in T-nuts into the channel, and you can do that basically inserting it like that. Sometimes they fight you a little bit, but you can center them like that and then slide them to where you need them at. So we're gonna do a couple of these on each of the uprights. And this is where the side brace will connect to. Something to note is you might wanna get the orientation. It's a matter of preference, of course, but if you wanna hide most of the T-nut, for example, we'll have the longer side towards the inside, towards the center. That way they're not showing. The next thing we're going to do is we're going to attach our joint plates. We're going to attach the joint plates with the low socket head cap screws. so we can get him started. Now I'm cheating here because I haven't put the Vibrotite on it. We will use the smallest of our wrench, the 5/32, and we can get these started. If you have a power tool and you want to do that with a power tool, you can, but we recommend that you start the threads first by hand, and then you do not get it completely tight with the power tool. You don't want to over tighten. It's a little bit easier sometimes with the power tool to get over torque. So we'll go ahead and give the recommended torque parameters in the video. Once you get a torque to the right parameters, you're going to go ahead and attach it to the uprights. And I recommend grabbing a tape measure and basically getting the distance where you want that side brace to attach distance-wise. A lot of guys would like to have it in the middle. If you have an extra side brace, you might want to divide that distance. So just grab a tape measure and mark your spots. I like to use a table as a reference, and basically I use some of the lines of the table to help me get things straight. Of course, we're going to have everything not completely tight yet until we have on the final assembly. So that way, if there's a little bit of adjustment, we can make them there. But we will grab our regular socket head cap screws, 5/8 long, and we're going to attach it to the drop-in T-nuts that we put in there earlier. So we will grab our 1/4-inch Allen wrench, and this is where it really helps to have a ball and Allen wrench, because now you can have a bit of an angle to get it started. Now sometimes to get these started, you might want to use another wrench to get it aligned, get that started in there. We're going to do the same on the other side. Okay, so it's all coming together now. The next step will be to attach our bed rail feet. In this stage, we're not going to put our corner brackets yet, but do keep in mind the orientation of your rack. For example, if this is the outside of your rack, then you want the feet to be pointing down like this. Also, in this case, I'm doing it wrong because the feet, when they have this tab right here, they'll go towards the center of the rack. So this will go on this side, and then we have an opposite going into the other direction. Same thing, we'll have our Vibrotite put in this, very important. We're gonna put our screws underneath. Now, sometimes the powder coat might be a little bit thicker for these holes, but we try to keep the tolerance as tight as possible for these. So you might have to do a bit of running it through first. But we're gonna go ahead and grab it to the edge of the table and get these started into our threads in this direction. All right, so we're gonna show you guys how to use the thread locker Vibrotite. We have a couple of these tubes included in the kit, and you're basically just going to squirt some of it in the very first few threads. And that's it. All right, we're gonna go ahead and put our bed rail feet on the assembly, the uprights. So remember the orientation. What you see here is the outside of the rack. And again, you might wanna get it started first before you use any power tools. Awesome, so now we assemble our side section together with the bed rail feet. I'm not gonna put anything else in this assembly until I get into the Rivian. So that will be the next step. John is gonna be guiding us through what we're gonna do for installing the bed rails into the Rivian.
All right, I'm John with Xtrusion Overland. We're moving now to our bed rail assembly for the Rivian. A couple things to go over. You'll see that it's already including the button for the gear tunnel. Something that we have behind here is a little actuator that's an adjustable length here, right? So you could adjust how far this will be pressed once you get it on. Like if you find that you need a little bit more, you could unscrew this or screw it back in. These will be already included in your rails. And then once it's on there, you know, you could play with the stroke length on how far you got to push. Another thing as we move into the rail assembly is the end caps. So you know, it's just as simple as putting it together with a couple of the socket cap screws, and you do not need Vibratite on these since it's not a structural component, but just pop those on real quick, one on either side. So just give it a nice polished finished look on the ends so you don't have exposed extrusion. Now it's time to assemble the Rivian bed rails. As mentioned earlier, we've got a couple U-bolts here, or U-nuts, I guess. So just place them underneath the cleats. Try to just center it within that channel as best you can. This will help as you align this. All right. Now you will keep in mind where the button location is, and make sure that that's seated inside there, and set the bed rail over the cleats and kind of eye the holes for the mounting the best you can. From here you will start at the rear of the truck and use the longer socket head cap screw to go into and grab that U-nut so that you can pull it up. This allows you to now install one of the low head socket head cap screws so that it holds in position. Now unscrew the long one and go ahead and put your other one in. And then you got it. So the next thing to make note of, like these little indentions on the molded part of the bed cap, use that as your guide to align this to try to keep it parallel, because the rear bed rail bracket is going to go over the top of those. So we want to try to get that as parallel as we can, because again, this will be covered up so you won't be able to get to it once we start assembling the rack on the rails. These bolts do have Vibratite, so make sure that you have them prepared before you put them on. Play with that a little bit to get it aligned. And then, now that that's in place, you could go ahead with your last one. Now, the front we don't want to tighten down, because as we assemble the rack and put it on, you know, there might be some movements that we need to do to make sure that it's square. So leave the front side loose. You'll be able to get to those with the bed bracket on, because it'll be out of the way. So we just repeat this process for the other side. It's exactly the same. And then we'll move to adding the rack. Okay. Next, we're going to add our drop-in T-nuts to the bed rails. You got an inside and outside T-slot, so you're going to put 2 per section. So the rear will get 2, on the inside, and the front will get 2 on the inside, and then you only have 1 on the outside. Just make sure you have the orientation so that the threaded portion is on the outside. Otherwise, you'll see the T-nut as it's underneath the bed bracket. So just add those, push them out a little bit wider than you need to, because you could always push them in to adjust the position as you tighten up and put your bed rails on, the brackets on the bed rails. Okay, so I have a bed bracket here. When you're assembling this, you're not going to assemble it in this fashion, but just to give you a visual of how this is assembled. And the orientation of the T-nuts, you'll see that the threaded part is on the outside. So that way when you set this, which is actually going to go like that, but when you set it on there, you're not going to see the outer portion of the T-nut. Now if it was the opposite, like you could see here, if you're looking down, you'll see the outer side of the T-nut. So just to keep those tucked in to where you don't see them, make sure that the thicker side of the T-nut is on the outside. That way you don't see it. Here, and the other thing that is kind of a tip here is make sure that you're further out than you need to be, because you can always slide the T-nuts under where you need them to be, so it's easier to find them. Because otherwise, if it's too far in, like this case, I can't get to it. So just make sure that you're further out as you assemble this, because then you could always move it in to align it. All right, so I got some help here with the fully assembled side. The rear goes right at the edge of the extrusion, so you're gonna see the seam of the cap, the end cap, is gonna meet up with the bottom of the bed bracket. So now that we have that in position, we're just gonna add our button heads to the bed brackets. There's 2 in the rear, 1 in the front. As Alan mentioned earlier, sometimes the powder coating's heavy in the holes, so you might have to screw the hole or the bolt into the hole before it even gets to the T-nut, just like I'm doing right now. This one's super tight.
I'd say it might have been a good idea to even do this prior to.
All right, before you add your bed side, the rack side, to your rails, since sometimes the powder coating gets heavy inside the holes, it's a good idea to just, while it's off, run these button heads in, just to clear that hole. That makes it much easier on you whenever you have it on the bed rails, trying to get these aligned with the drop ends.
You can do that from the bottom too.
Yep, now we move to our second side here. We got the bolts in position. We're just trying to align the T-nuts now. So we have here on the button, there's a 1.5 millimeter little tiny button head. If you ever need to replace the rubber gasket, you could do it from the top side rather than having to remove your rack. You could also, if you find over time, if you need to adjust the depth of it, you could also do it here from the top to remove this CNC plate, and then the gasket will come with that, and then you could pull out the screw that has the stopper on it.
All right, guys, so just like we assembled the side brace and the uprights together, in that same way we're going to do the crossbar and the top brace assembly. So in this case, we got same thing, measure your distances where you want the top braces to be at, and get your crossbars aligned with your side braces, attach it with the joints, and then on top of that, we're going to go ahead and put our corner brackets into the crossbars. And this way, we'll have this ready for us to place it on top of the other 2 assemblies that we did previously. So next, we're gonna show you how to do the bed rails and put everything else together.
We've now come to the point where we're finishing up the rack assembly. So we have a fully assembled top structure. Alan will help me put this on top of the rack here. Now that the rack structure is fully assembled, we go back to our bed brackets, and these button heads we left loose, we now need to tighten those up. So we need to leave them loose to align the rack. So now, of course, everything's tightened up. We're good to go there. Go ahead and tighten these up, as well as the front U-bolt on the bed rails. Those are ready to be tightened up now. So you just basically do it once over on all of the hardware that's associated with the bed rail, and the rack's assembled.
All right, so one of the final things we're going to be doing in the assembly is tightening these rail bolts. We use the 5/32 with those low head screws like John mentioned, and make sure that you're alternating when you're tightening these, that you have an alternating, do half a turn on one and then half a turn on the other one. And as a measure of torque, the 5/32 is a little thinner wrench, and you get a little bit until you get a little bit of that flex right there. We don't want to over torque this. We have an aluminum U-nut which is perfectly strong, but definitely we don't want to over torque them. So you get about probably I would say 5 degrees, 10 degrees of flex right there, and that should be perfect. All right, some of the finishing touches is putting our off-road plates on the assembly. We're going to have our 2 drop-in T-nuts in the crossbar. We can start that, putting that right there. Again, sometimes your powder coat on the holes might be a little tight, so you might want to run it a little bit through the hole first, and then we're going to go ahead and put it against that drop-in T-nut. Sometimes it helps to back out the screw to align the T-nut and then get it back in. It also helps to put, if your T-nut is not perfectly aligned, you can push it with your Allen wrench and then align it with the hole right there. Now you can put your screw in there. And for the uprights, this gets a little more tricky because they tend to drop like that. So sometimes what we want to do is we grab our Allen wrench and then we scooch it right in there. I went too far. In this case, this one's not rolling, but when it does, you just grab your Allen wrench right there, hold it, and then get the screw started in there, and that'll get you where you need to be. So perfect, so we're almost done with the assembly. So this customer added the optional Molle plates. I think it completes the look. It's a signature look for our rack. In this case, it just mounts to one of the side braces. So he just had one side brace per side. He added just one bar on the other side. He can have total flexibility of what to mount on this rack this way. You also have a couple of badges that we include with our logo, so you can just attach it wherever you think it'll be out of the way. In this case, the center of the crossbar is the perfect spot for it. So that's it. You'll see a few shots of it rolling away and see how good it looks in the Rivian, but rest assured that this is one of the best racks in the market. It is totally worth the wait.